Noah, so we love data at the Steam Zone. And some interesting data came out today about Waymo versus you, just a human driver. And it is nuts. It is insane how much better Waymo is than actual drivers. And this data is consistent across a number of metrics, like whether measuring number of injuries, crashes, airbag deployments, motorcycles, cyclists, pedestrian hitting. So it's better if you're in the car and it's better if you're out of the car. This has me pumped about the future and kind of got me thinking, like, let's switch all to Waymo right now and let's just end human driving. What about you?
Yeah, I think it kind of begs the question, man, is the jury still out on driverless cars? And it looks like the answer is no. The jury is in. These things are safe. They're certainly safer than humans. It's not maybe psychologically safe to folks who have never touched a Waymo before, which, let's remember, is the vast majority of the American people. It is the vast majority of the human race. But I'll tell you, Ben, I was, on my last trip to SF, I actually waited for a Waymo, even though there's only a few of them. It's way easier to get an Uber or a Lyft in San Francisco than it is to get a Waymo. And they cost more, not less. The whole promise of driverless cars is that these things, we don't need people. They can go fill up their own gas tank. They can drive everywhere. They're going to be way cheaper. Not right now, not in San Francisco. They're actually supply constrained. So with all that said, Ben, it is exciting. And the experience when you do get in is delightful. If you're an antisocial introvert like me, you don't have to speak to another human. The smells are closer to a Westin lobby than the typical multifaceted odors that you might encounter in somebody else's car. The music is your choice from a number of cool, calm, soothing jazz experiences. The rider experience is really, really solid. And so the question, Ben, is why we don't immediately swap all cars off the road. Why is Waymo not blowing up everywhere in every city across America? You want to lead us off on that discussion?
Yeah, some of it I think is, and I'll let you dive into the supply side more, but some of it is just like NIMBYism, right? Good old-fashioned NIMBYism, right? We're doing a pilot now of Waymo New York, right? We have evidence from San Francisco. We have evidence from Austin. I think it's in Phoenix. I mean, there is just like a ton of evidence. And what does New York do to slow this down, to stop progress? Well, they're putting a safety driver in each car during the pilot. So like,
Ben, you're a native New Yorker. New York is not San Francisco.
It is just crazy. We know the interest groups that have stopped progress again and again are going to try and, right, this is going to shake things up. That doesn't mean as we transition to the future economy that we shouldn't take care of the people that aren't benefiting from these things. We absolutely have to do that. I think that's actually part of capitalism and growth, is making sure that everyone gets brought along. Otherwise, you wind up discouraging innovation like this. And so some of people's fears around this is because they are worried that they are going to be left behind. And that's a very reasonable and fair worry, right? So I don't want to dismiss that. But also, we need a system where they don't have that worry. They know if the world changes, society will make sure that they are given every opportunity to change to and evolve, right? And have a fair shot. And if we don't do that, then we're going to stop progress. And all these interest groups, whether it's in just this area of cars or any other area that we talk about on the show where there's progress, are going to slow down progress, right? We're going to have people wanting to do nuclear and then traditional energy providers wanting to slow it down. This will be in every arena. And so the only way I think to stopping progress is to make sure that people are all invested together in a future that is better.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because it is not a nothing concern, right? Like, the number one reason, and I think the number one reason that people are maybe against driverless cars, it's a little bit of the safety thing. It's really the jobs thing. And what does that picture look like? Today, Ben, transportation is about 7% of U.S. GDP. It's nearly $2 trillion a year. 16.2 million, this is a couple years old, 16.2 million Americans were employed in transportation and related industries. 30% of all civilian jobs have a component of driving to them. So 1 in 3 Americans has to drive for work. Now, look, you can look at this a couple different ways, right? You can look at this and say, great, now we're going to have everybody's going to have some portion of their time back. They're not going to have to drive. They can continue to, work or take calls or whatever. That's for the information workers. What about the people who their job is driving? Whether you're talking about truck drivers, frankly, we've already disrupted the taxi industry with Uber and Lyft, and so now we're going to do that again. This is not a rounding error in the American population, right? Millions and millions of people are employed in these ways. I'm a free markets guy generally. I think it's important to let the market dictate or let the market lead. And it's important to let the consumers and they have been, frankly, in the United States for a long time. Consumers have been the driving force in our economy, as opposed to places like China, where suppliers are the driving force in the economy. Here, it's been a consumer-led economy, but we can't just hurtle headlong into unemploying tens of millions of people and saying goodbye, good night, and good luck. So I think there is now, look, just pumping the brakes and just trying to slow it down without a way to, without really starting to think about how we're going to integrate those folks. And yes, some people are going to be in ops centers, and there'll be other kind of services that'll be provided as wraparound. Absolutely. But we need to actually, I think, provide some, whether they're social services, whether they're companies like Waymo or like Tesla, providing services and thinking critically about how to engage those workforces. I don't want to fall on the crutch of saying this is a social conversation. I think that's a crazy thing to say, and nobody ever participates in those societal conversations. But there is good reason to not snap our fingers and unemploy, 16 million people tomorrow. Not to mention the fact that even if we wanted to, Ben, neither Google nor Tesla is prepared to stamp out the number of these vehicles that we would actually need to be able to service even the United States, let alone the rest of the world. Part of that supply constraint in places like San Francisco, the Waymos are expensive. I think the last I saw is something like $100,000 per car. If you look at them, they look like something out of the Jetsons. They got all the little spinning wheels and whirring bells and whistles. The robo-taxi, Elon famously says no LiDAR, none of this other stuff. We're just going to be video, just like the humans just drive with their eyes. So you've got that, we'll see. We'll actually talk about, maybe the direction that goes and why I think it's an advantage for Tesla in the long run. But in the short term, we couldn't roll them out even if we wanted to. So where does this leave us?
Yeah, I think this is like everything when there's housing with the NIMBY divide. To me, it's the same thing, which is YIMBYs are never saying actually how the NIMBYs portray us, which is like, oh, you're just going to build a skyscraper to the sky. Nothing's going to stop you. It's like, no, but we need to switch the conversation from no to how can we do this, right? Details, of course, matter, but we need partners in getting there. We don't need naysayers. And so this is going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen, right? We know this is going to happen. You can slow it down. You can grind the gears of progress forward if you want to be anti-technology, but this is just going to happen, right? We saw the same thing with the taxi commissions and Uber. Like, you'd have to be blind to think we're not all going to be in these cars. Now, what we can do if we have an active partner on the other side of people saying no, and instead switch to how do we do this? How do we transition in a good way? How do we make this safe? How do we do that? All working towards the same common goal of making this happen, we'll get stuff done. But if the attitude is just no, 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 well, then they're not going to have partners. And the tech companies, like they do in other areas, are just going to push forward. And so both sides need to find a way to yes and need to work together.
Ezra Jacobson or Ben Klein, I'm not sure what we're going to call you, but he's consistent, folks. He's consistent. So we'll see. I will tell you, this is not investment advice. I'm far from a financial professional, but my money's on Tesla, man. The robotaxi is so damn cheap. You're going to bet against Elon in mass scale production? I'm in, man. I'm in. I think Waymo's a small fraction of the Google portfolio. I think the robotaxi and the Tesla fleet is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
I own Tesla too. It's called the S&P 500, so we're aligned. Welcome back to our next segment. We've got Charles Yang. He is the founder of a really cool initiative, the Center for Industrial Strategy, and they are looking to place engineers in the government to do good stuff. Tell us more about what you're building.
First, gents, thanks for having me on. Basically, I spent some time in government with an engineering sort of technical background, and one of the things that really surprised me was how few engineers that are in government, especially when we're working on things like grants and loans for manufacturing and critical mineral projects. Understanding how those projects actually work is obviously super important. And for my time there, I would say, there's a few technical people who made all the difference in the world in selecting good projects versus selecting bad projects. And when I left, I figured we need way more people like that. And who is working on getting more engineers and helping them understand and plug into the policymaking ecosystem. And I became convinced that we should just do something. And so we're launching the Knudsen Industrial Strategy Fellowship. It's open right now, and you guys should definitely all apply.
Charles, the Knudsen Fellowship. So this is the namesake is really cool here. I want to touch on this. There's been an interesting year. We've covered some of the direct commissioning stuff that the military's tried to do, trying to bring in folks
awesome.
like the CTOs of Palantir and OpenAI, really high-flying people. William Knudsen, one of the originals. Tell us about the namesake of the fellowship.
Yeah. Would plug the Freedom Forge book if your listeners haven't already read it. But William Knudsen, he was an auto executive. He spent his growing up, I think he was like shaping metal when he was like a teenager and ended up as one of the auto execs at the Big Three. And when World War II hadn't even broken out, the U.S. hadn't even declared war yet, but obviously conflict was on the rise in Europe, he was commissioned into the army to help boost industrial production. And he was, I think, commissioned at one of the highest levels that a civilian has ever been directly commissioned at. But he played a huge role in helping convert America's factories into an arsenal of democracy. And I think we need that spirit again of engineers and talented private sector people who raise their hand and say, hey, I want to serve my country. And I think we've seen a lot of that already in this administration, but I think there's certainly more that can be done to that effect. And so that's part of why we're trying to build out this fellowship and raise the next generation of William Knudsens.
What are the biggest structural barriers, if you could wave a magic wand and fix something that's stopping the talent from coming into the government? Is it money?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it just interest, awareness? What do you think it is?
Yeah. I would say one big thing is just government is super illegible, right? When you look at the tech world, right, there is so many tokens out on the internet, right? All the Paul Graham essays, like all these little blogs, everyone writes up, here's how I learned to raise, here's how I hire, what's a PM, like how do you talk to VCs? There's so much out there on the internet. There's like very little about how does an agency work? What does an agency do? What is what is a cool vision for what you could do within an agency? And it doesn't help. And actually the Trump admin is actually starting to reform some of this, which I think is good, around even the job titles, right? Like I was what was my official title? Like management and program analyst. What is that, man? And that's all their job titles. It's just like really generic things. So like there's a lot of small things even like that. But I think a large part of it is just what do people actually do in government? And why is it cool and compelling? I don't think pay is actually a big deal. I did take a pay cut going into government, and I think we should pay people more, but I was living a very comfortable life. Where we probably should pay people more is in Congress, actually, I would say. And this has been a well-known fact since like LBJ. The executive branch is paid much better than the Hill staff. Starting salary for a congressional staffer is $45K or something, or $50K, something really bad. And it's all like poli-sci majors, basically. And if you're like writing legislation on the DOE authorization for like critical minerals, you should probably pay a little bit more than $45K a year and maybe have a technical background in wealth. There's some people working on this for like tech policy. There's actually a lot of tech policy fellowships, but I think we want to help do this for the industrial sector as well. So that's the vision.
I want to dive deeper into the fellowship itself, Charles, because as you said, this has been there have been focus on bringing technical doing these rotations. There's Tech Congress. There was the U.S. Digital Service for a while. There's lots of ways to bring people in government. Your specific fellowship, give us the 5 W's. Like what is going on? What are you trying to accomplish? How long is it? Where is it? And then who should actually be applying to this?
For sure. Yeah, and I should say Tech Congress, U.S. Digital Service were both amazing programs, and I think we're taking some inspiration for the number of tech policy fellowships that have already been sprung up in the past 10 years to applying it towards the industrial sector. So yeah, quick details. It's a 10-week program. It's remote, so anyone can apply. There will be some readings that you'll have to do, and we'll have some guest speakers from DC who are deep in the industrial policy space that you can talk to and meet with. And then we'll have a nice little field trip at the end. We'll bring you all out to DC. Folks will be able to like chat with people and get a better on the ground sense of what's going on. Applications close in almost a little under 2 weeks, so plenty of time to still apply. We'll actually release the reading list probably next week just to keep folks engaged and interested in what's going on. And they'll also do some policy memo writing. So that's another piece of the fellowship. So in addition to doing the reading, talking with people, actually like getting a hands-on feel for what is writing a policy memo like, and we'll have some folks walk fellows through that as well. Who's it for? If you are interested in industrial policy and want to put in some work and meet some other cool people who are interested in it, that's one part. And if you have some sort of like technical industry experience, I think broadly understood, if you've ever worked with your hands on anything, if you've ever been in some niche industry that you feel like is really misunderstood by DC, even if you've worked in investment, I think that's another area where like understanding capital flows is really important. And I think there's a lack of that understanding as well at times. So even financiers or investors, I think would also be welcome here. We are basically looking to bring people who are like not broadly construed from the swamp or from this existing ecosystem and are like part of these outside actual private sector worlds.
And how do we think about two things? This is full time, so they're going to have to take a leave of absence from their job, or
oh no, this is
they'll do their
remote.
job remotely.
Remote 1 hour, we'll have 1 hour a week synchronous, and we'll have a couple hours of reading and writing async, but this is totally compatible with your existing
Great.
job. And we'll do, the field trip will be like a Friday, Saturday, so you have to take a day off, but it'll be super fun, so it'll be worth it.
Cool. And if this fixes, I think it starts to fix the top of the funnel problem, how do we then follow through after this and make sure we get these people into the government actually once we leave this?
Yeah.
Not asking you to solve everything.
Well, we will have some folks, how should I say this? We'll have some folks who are plugged into the admin who can help bring folks in. I'll just say that broadly. I think the other sort of structural issue that we want to address, first, you need people, right? Just like building up the talent pipeline. The other main structural issue, and this is something I'm still thinking about, how do we address, it's more cultural than anything, is how do you actually elevate people to have the scope of responsibility to accomplish their mission, right? It's like, there's one thing to be like, I want to go to government and help solve critical minerals. Like, it's divided across a bunch of different offices. There's a bunch of different kinds of roles. How do we like find the right role and make sure that people actually are able to accomplish sort of the mission that they've been given? I think this admin actually has done a really good job of that. Maybe not necessarily on the right missions all the time, but Doge is an example of what happens when you elevate people with responsibility and let them do things. They can move very quickly. Maybe I'd wish they'd moved quickly on maybe a different set of priorities initially, but I think that's one example of what happens when you give people that sort of responsibility. I think we need more of that accountability in government. That's a cultural issue. I don't really know how to address that, but I think first building out the talent pipeline, just getting folks in and getting more people experienced in working inside the bureaucracy is a great first step.
Awesome, Charles. It is definitely a great first step. I love the focus, and it's flexible, so it's such a great teaser for people who are curious and want to explore something without quitting their jobs, moving across the country. Love to see it. All right, Charles, so before we let you go, just zoom out a bit and just give us that top view of the Center for Industrial Strategy. What should we expect to see from you guys in the weeks and months ahead? What are you really excited about? What are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, our broad goal is to build a bipartisan coalition around reindustrialization. And so we've been doing a lot of private behind-the-scenes stuff, holding some dinners that are all bipartisan and working with different partners. This fellowship, I think, will be a lot of great stuff coming out of that, from the policy memos the fellows will be writing and the field trip we'll be hosting at the end of the year. But we'll have a few more sort of public-facing stuff around different parts of the conversation in energy, critical minerals, and I think hopefully trying to provide some of that analysis that we think is also missing from the ecosystem. But the funny thing about the policy world is a lot of it is just talking to people, I guess I would say broadly. But I think this fellowship is going to be a really great way to meet some interesting new people and hopefully help bring them into the conversation.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Fantastic, Charles. We are excited. The deadline for the fellowship is September 26th. Get those applications in. We'll link in the comments and in the show notes. Charles, thanks for making some time to chat with us, and we are excited to have you back on here soon. There's lots of good things ahead for the center and for the fellowship, no doubt.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Ben, let me ask you something. Were you a big Andrew Yang fan back in the election? Were you a Yang gang guy?
I'm interested in things he has to talk about.
Oh, it's such a diplomatic answer. Listen, Andrew Yang, off of his independent political party thing, I think maybe he's put that on ice. I'm not sure. He's back on the timeline this week, Ben, with a new product. It's called Noble Mobile. Let's take a look.
Our phones are amazing, but they're taking something from us. Our time, our focus, the moments that matter most. Have a great day.
Are you serious?
So the idea here is to actually pay people to use less of their cellular data plan. less is more? What do we think?
Yeah, great in theory, like everything, you know what I'm going to say. I think the details here matter. So listen, I work mostly from home, so I'm on Wi-Fi. So if this is just to save network bandwidth, cool, that's awesome. But I think this might be part of a larger trend of like, how do we disconnect from our phones? How do we get more in touch with human society? With Wi-Fi these days, I don't think actually this is helping that much. First of all, I can download my podcast and my YouTube TV video, right, before I get on the subway and still be on my AirPods and not talk to any humans. And so does this just switch like when I'm downloading to being when I'm on Wi-Fi versus that? Okay, cool. Maybe that helps with bandwidth stuff. That's not that revolutionary. I don't think that changes society. Cool. That always down for new companies to innovate around those areas. But I don't know. I just don't think this is going to change behavior that much. If there were ways to do that, I think that'd be great. But I think we're all going to be on our phones, not talking to each other still. With this or with.
Look, I think it's a fair take. I think there's two things that can be true here. The first is that I think this is just like buying a lower data plan, but with really good marketing. Right? If you don't need unlimited data, or you don't need a terabyte, or you don't need 500 gigs, you can buy 50 gigs and you can pay less. So there is that, Ben, which is maybe Andrew Yang is just, look, Yang Gang took off because this guy knows his way around a good marketing need. That could be true. Part two is I do think there is something to this trend, which is the less is more trend, right? Americans have been bombarded since I remember the movie Super Size Me. Remember Super Size Me? Is this culture at McDonald's? It wasn't just McDonald's. The culture of American consumerism, which is that a little bit of money, you get a lot more. We always want more. Bigger sodas, fatter burgers, bigger fries. Give us more data, more speed. I think that we are at a moment where, as now AI, more speed all the time, people are they're maybe hitting the pause button a little bit, right? There's a little bit of there's that product that you can put your phone in the case and kind of brick it and put it in your living room. We're not going to sign off the internet, man. We're not cutting the Wi-Fi. We're not doing cable cutting for Wi-Fi. We need to work. We need to make money. But there's something to be said for when you're out, you're with friends, when you're in public, when you're at the park. Maybe you should be enjoying those surroundings. Right? Maybe that's not the moment to be catching up on your Twitter feed. Maybe that is not the moment to be swiping for some dates for the weekend. Just enjoy what's around you, be present, live in the world, and enjoy this great bounty that we have here on planet Earth. Do I think this is the next great product? I don't know that I'm going to go rush to switch over to Noble Mobile, Ben. I think I got a legacy unlimited plan. I'm not sure I'm giving that up. I might be more of a team flip phone versus team smartphone. Think about that. We've threatened this on the Steam Zone before, being in Washington Square Park, trading in flip phones or trading in smartphones and giving out smartphone or flip phones. We've talked about this before, being in Washington Square Park, trading in smartphones for flip phones. That may still be in our future. But Mr. Yang, I don't know. We'll see. He is an entrepreneur at heart. We'll see where this one goes.
Great. Listen, I like the idea of less if it's a choice. I don't want forced decline and I don't want forced non-abundance, right? We still need to embrace abundance and more is more. So how do we do that while giving people the most optionality? The freedom then to choose how and when to engage and what to consume is the best option.
The Abundance Light podcast rolls on, then beats the drum. All right, let's close this one out.
This week, Noah, I want to steam social media and how it's changing, I think, my brain and everyone I know's brains. Look at this tweet from Derek Thompson, right? Here he is talking about how this original tweet from Basic Prompts saying OpenAI just leaked what people use ChatGPT for, right? And that has 1.8 million views. And then you actually read like the details, right? We talk about details and execution mattering. It's not a leak. OpenAI is working, published with economists, like working publicly to share information. So it's literally the opposite of leaking. It is them being good partners to research. Of course, if you want to get into a detailed discussion of are they sharing everything or not, sure. But the framing of leak already paints it in this is bad, right? Like leak, ooh, what's underneath the leak? And it just is all about selling that tweet, selling your information, instead of having a substantive discussion on the actual content, which is what are people using ChatGPT for? No one's having that discussion. No one's actually having the substantive discussions on social media before. Now we're just taking words out of context. Everyone's doing this, and then we're just reacting to the reaction, and the next person will react to that reaction, and there'll be no substantive conversation. I think this is bad. I don't have a solution. My solution is just spending less and less time on social media because I'm not gaining anything from it. I feel like I'm learning. So you feel like you're monitoring the situation when you find out about something 2 hours before you get the actual news alert. But I don't think it's actually that useful. I'm starting to see less and less value, and I'm switching my time from Twitter, from Instagram, from those places, from X, to like Substack, to longer form content where you have to engage substantively with ideas and one word matters less, right? If you have 140 characters, one word, one misplaced word can have outsized influence. But when you have to write a longer, thoughtful piece, the impact of any one word is a lot less.
I don't disagree. I'm gonna pick up on it, Ben. I'm gonna respond to Ben's team, and I'm gonna pile on, because here's the deal. You need an engine. This is where we're at, folks. Life moves forward, but it moves with cyclicality. Some people say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I don't know. I think it mostly repeats. And here's the deal. When you see what's happening in social media today, it's the same as what's going on in the streaming wars, where every brand wanted to go direct. So they all started their streaming services. And now what do you get? You get bundles. When I was growing up, Ben, we had a bundle. It was called Cablevision, right? It was every channel you wanted in a box. Now you can subscribe to 5,000 independent journalists. You could subscribe to, frankly, whoever you think represents, at least entertains or represents your viewpoints on whatever social media platform you want. I think we're going to have to go through some pain until we come out the other side. And right now, what I can tell you is the last few weeks, the amount of garbage that is being put out in the world, which is there's the kind of the just asking questions crowd. There's the conspiracy theories, which they're fun. I like a good conspiracy too. Isn't it always interesting to think maybe this isn't what it seems? You actually feel a little smart. You feel a little countercultural, feel a little revolutionary. At the end of the day, I think there is going to be a flight towards quality. It's what you're talking about. It's why if you're in tech, you read Packy McCormick, right? You read Not Boring. It is these long breakdowns of incredible depth of insight into how a business works. Because at the end of the day, you want to understand something. You don't just want to fill your brain with gobbledygook mush that makes you into a nonsense goblin, right? You read Lenny Rachitsky because you want to understand how great products are built and what go to the people behind these great ideas. I think the same is going to be true in the news media. I am the first person to say mainstream media needed a reckoning. They got dumb, fat, boring, and lazy. They thought they could just shove crap down people's throats and that people would take their insight because of who was saying it. I think social media has democratized who's able to put information out in the world. That should be sharpening reporters' games. They should understand they need to compete for attention. But in the long run, and I do believe this, even though we're going through pain right now, in the long run, I believe that a well-educated citizenry is essential to the functioning of a state, and people want to understand what's going on. So they're going to go the places that give them the best chance to do that. So when I started, you need an engine. If you're out there building, if you're out there trying to build a name for yourself, if you're out there trying to communicate your story, it is not enough to post one tweet or one video or one commercial and walk away. You need a consistent machine that puts out well-informed, insightful content that people want to consume. I'm not saying you got to post on LinkedIn. I'm not saying you got to post on X. But whatever you put out in the world, you need to establish that regular cadence of information, that regular cadence of trust that brings you closer to the people who need to hear your message. So I'm with you, Ben. A good conspiracy is short-term entertaining, but it is a hollow diet. And let's hope that the folks who want to put out high-quality information are able to do it, and they're able to do it consistently.
Here first, guys. Leak from Noah Scheinbaum's private diary leak about his thoughts on technology. So check it out here immediately before the leak is taken down.
God help anybody reading my private diary. All right, that's it for today, everyone. We will see you next week in the Steam Zone. Thanks for joining.